Tonight, Iran rejects another ultimatum from Donald Trump for a deal in 48 hours, calling it helpless and nervous. It comes as both Iran and the US continue to search for the missing crew member of an American warplane shot down yesterday. Also on the programme, weather warnings for potentially damaging winds in large parts of the UK.
Including here in Redcar on England's northeast coast, where Storm Dave is expected to reach its peak at around midnight tonight.
A fourth person is arrested in connection with an arson attack on ambulances owned by a Jewish charity in London last week. And a stunning upset in the FA Cup as Southampton beat Arsenal to go marching into the semi-finals. Good evening. Iran has tonight rejected another ultimatum from Donald Trump, demanding they make a deal within 48 hours, calling it helpless and nervous. Both US and Iranian forces are still trying to find the missing crew member of an American warplane shot down over southern Iran. Its pilot was rescued. Iran says the area near a nuclear power plant at Bushehr has been hit for a fourth time, prompting deep concern from the UN's nuclear watchdog. Israel, America's ally in the war, said that it has struck petrochemicals plants in Iran after striking steel plants yesterday. Our World News correspondent Joe Inwood has the latest.
Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened to destroy Iran's power plants, its economy, even its desalination plants if a deal is not reached. Already, the economic damage to this country is vast. This was the Mahshar petrochemical complex near the border with Iraq. This strike appears to have been carried out by the US's main ally in this war, Israel.
After we destroyed 70% of their steel production capacity, which serves as raw material for their weapons, today we struck the petrochemical plants.
It's not just industrial sites now being targeted. New footage has emerged of the moment US airstrikes destroyed the recently constructed B-1 bridge near Tehran. Donald Trump threatened to bomb Iran, in his words, back to the Stone Ages. Even as they looked on the ruins of their own houses, Iranians living nearby did not take kindly to that suggestion.
When we were in the Stone Age, we were still more advanced than the Americans. When you love your homeland, you'd even love the rubble left from your homes.
Any negotiations are complicated by the fact that a US weapons systems officer is currently somewhere in Iran, stranded after their plane was shot down. This footage, released by Iranian media, reportedly shows local nomads searching for them. A reward has been offered for their capture. Don't worry, he'll be found, the man says. The Iranians have wasted no time in claiming the shooting down of this jet as a great victory. A spokesman called it a black and humiliating day for the US. While pro-regime accounts have shared videos like this, designed to maximize the propaganda potential of this moment. Donald Trump has yet to comment on the shooting down of the plane, but did take to social media to say, "Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them." The Strait of Hormuz is a vital waterway, which has been effectively shut by Iran. The Revolutionary Guards released this footage showing what they say was their 95th missile barrage of the war. This has turned into an asymmetric conflict. US military muscle being met with Iranian economic pressure. It is still far too clear which will prove decisive. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Large parts of the UK are having a very blustery Easter weekend as Storm Dave, the fourth main storm of the year, blows in. A yellow wind weather warning is in place for much of Scotland, Northern England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. A more severe amber warning for Northern England, the Scottish borders and North Wales came into force earlier this evening. Well, Philippa Goymer is in Redcar for us now. And Philippa, it looks very blowy where you are.
It certainly is, Rita. Here in Redcar, Storm Dave is continuing to deepen. The peak of the storm for this part of the northeast will be at around midnight tonight, with the Met Office predicting gusts of between 50 and 60 miles per hour. Elsewhere, on more exposed parts of the country, they could get up to 80 miles per hour, and there's a lot of travel disruption that is expected with that, with some road closures currently in place, including the A66, which as of 9 o'clock tonight was closed to all vehicles between Bowes in County Durham and Drubb in Cumbria. And Storm Dave could continue to cause travel disruption for other types of travel, including rail, air, ferry travel across the next few days as well. So it's worth checking ahead before setting off on any journeys. And there is the potential for power cuts as well due to fallen power lines. Extra staff are on this weekend. Elsewhere, in more exposed parts, as I've said, such as the Pennines, Storm Dave was upgraded earlier this afternoon, Rita. It was a yellow weather warning, and then it got upgraded to an amber weather warning between 7 o'clock tonight and 3 o'clock in the morning. So that will be 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. So when people are waking up on Easter Sunday, Rita, things should be a bit better, in fact more back to normal. But for tonight here in Redcar, it's certainly very blustery here, and I can feel as if Storm Dave has certainly arrived here in Redcar.
Get into shelter. Thank you very much. Philippa Goyner there for us in Redcar. Thank you. The Metropolitan Police has removed 5 officers from frontline duties after a bag of weapons issued by the force, said to be a submachine gun and a pistol, was reportedly left outside the home of the Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan. Duncan Kennedy is outside Scotland Yard for us. And what is the Met saying about this, Duncan?
Well, Rita, the Met say they're carrying out an urgent review of this incident. They say that those officers have been removed from frontline duties whilst this investigation continues. It all happened earlier this week outside the home of the London Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan. We don't know whether the Mayor was at home at the time, but one of his neighbours was walking outside and saw a black canvas bag on the pavement, looked inside, and there was a police-issue rifle, a handgun, taser, some ammunition and other bits and pieces. The neighbour took the bag into his own flat, called the police. The police turned up in 7 minutes, a sign of just how seriously they took this. And by all accounts, the officers that did turn up were astounded by what they found, and they took the weapons away. The Mayor's office said this was a very serious incident and called on the police to do what they could to make sure it doesn't happen again. What did happen, we simply don't know. Was there some sort of confusion over a shift change, some absent-minded colleague doing something that shouldn't have done? We don't know. What is clear is that had it not been for a civic-minded member of the public finding these weapons, then this could have been a much more serious, much more embarrassing incident for the Met Police.
Duncan, thank you. Duncan Kennedy there. Russian drones have killed 5 people and injured 21 in an attack on a market area in the city of Nikopol in southern Ukraine. The governor of the area confirmed the attack, which took place close to territory occupied by Russian forces. At least 15 others were killed in Russian drone and missile attacks across Ukraine yesterday. A 4th person has been arrested in connection with last month's arson attack on ambulances owned by a Jewish charity in northwest London. Prosecutors say the arrest was made at Westminster Magistrates Court, where 3 people who've already been charged with arson were appearing. They've been remanded in custody. Lucy Manning reports.
As 3 suspects appeared in court, charged with setting fire to the 4 ambulances run by a Jewish volunteer group, a 19-year-old who'd come to hear the case was recognised by police, who suspected he was also involved and was promptly also arrested for arson with intent to endanger lives.
It appears the 4th man arrested had just turned up at the court building this morning, and he was later seen being taken out of the front doors by the police. The 3 other suspects spoke only to confirm their names and addresses, watched on by their relatives. The prosecution said this was a premeditated and targeted attack against the Jewish community, and the ambulances were deliberately targeted.
The 3 people charged are 20-year-old Hamza Iqbal and 19-year-old Rayhan Khan, both British and from Leighton in East London, and a 17-year-old British Pakistani who can't be named for legal reasons from Walthamstow. The court heard more than £1 million worth of damage was caused by 4 suspects to ambulances used to help people of any religion. The synagogue where they were parked and nearby flats were also damaged. Police are still investigating if the arson attack is linked to an Iranian-backed group who said it was responsible. Counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation, but the Met said it hadn't yet been declared as terrorism. The 3 suspects in court were remanded in custody and will appear at the Old Bailey in 3 weeks. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
NASA says the astronauts on board the Orion spacecraft are more than halfway to the moon. The crew of the Artemis 2 mission is due to pass around the far side of the moon on Monday. It's the first time that human beings have left Earth's orbit since 1972. The agency has shared the first high-resolution images of the Earth taken by the crew and also of the moon, as Rebecca Morrell reports from NASA headquarters in Houston.
It's the spacecraft with an out-of-this-world view. The Artemis astronauts are taking in their last close-up view of home as their sights become set on their destination.
We were screaming right above the clouds, and now here we are, well over 100,000 miles away from Earth and closer to the moon than we are to the Earth right now.
The Grand Canyon of the moon is called Oriental Basin, and we were able to see the entire thing. Stand by. We were able to see the entire thing, and so it's clear that we are not on Earth because that feature is not all visible from Earth, and so it's already special, the view that we had.
The crew have been getting used to life in microgravity. There's not much room inside their capsule, but they're learning how to eat, work, and exercise, all under the watchful eye of the NASA team back on Earth.
The focus has shifted to here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the team in mission control are monitoring the spacecraft and, of course, the astronauts 24/7. They're now on course to fly around the far side of the moon, which now isn't quite so far away.
We're very curious to see what they can see. We've taught them and trained them how to document and observe the moon from their vantage point. There's also just the aspect of the humanity of being able to be in a position like that, looking back towards the moon and the Earth itself. So understanding, how that impacts everyone as well is going to be exciting.
The Orion spacecraft is hurtling through space, but it's not all plain sailing.
You're getting a live look outside the windows of the Orion spacecraft as they conduct that wastewater dump.
There's a new problem with the Universal Waste Management System, otherwise known as the toilet. An exterior vent that dumps the wastewater has frozen, so they might need a spot of space plumbing to fix it. The crew are now making the final preparations for their lunar flyby and getting ready to share what they see with scientists and all of us. Rebecca Morrell, BBC News at Mission Control in Houston.
Now, there's been a big shock in the 6th round of the FA Cup, with Southampton beating Arsenal 2-1. Manchester City thrashed Liverpool 4-0, while Chelsea are also into the semi-finals after a big win. Joe Linsky was watching.
For Southampton, like so many clubs, the FA Cup's a stage for memory. They won this competition 50 years ago this season and now summoned up that spirit to face the top-flight leaders. For the Championship side, it felt once more like '76. Arsenal swept away by the swinging boot of Ross Stewart. Now the South Coast believed. Arsenal brought on their stars and found a way back.
Havertz with the pullback, Jokerit with the finish!
Still hanging on to hopes of a treble of trophies, it wasn't meant to end like this.
Plays it into Charles!
When Southampton last won it, they were a second-tier side. Now, once again, the Saints are marching on. In the day's first quarter-final, Manchester City were emphatic, but in Liverpool's fading season, it hurt to lose like this. Last month, City won the EFL Cup. It could still be the first of 3 domestic trophies. Pep Guardiola watched them stroll clear from the stands. He was banned from the touchline. His striker won this by himself.
Haaland!
For Haaland, another hat-trick, but for Liverpool, another chance for a trophy slipped away. Their last hope now is the Champions League. Then in the summer, they say goodbye to Mo Salah. This 4-0 defeat puts pressure on their coach. City will be part of a heavyweight last four, and the Cup's Chelsea's last chance to save their season and perhaps their coach. This week, Liam Rosenior banned his own player for 2 matches. They didn't need Enzo Fernandez to find a way through Port Vale.
And Jorel Hato scored for Chelsea after a minute.
In Vale's first quarter-final since 1954, they lost by 7-0. A cruel end to a cup run. Chelsea rise into the semis. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
In the Scottish Premiership, Rangers have gone to the top of the table. They beat Dundee United by 4-2 at Ibrox to ensure that they lead the league for the first time in 2 years. But Hearts could retake the top spot if they win tomorrow. Cambridge have continued their winning streak in the men's boat race with a 4th consecutive win. Oxford remained in touch for much of the race, held in blustery conditions, but Cambridge pulled away to win by just over 11 seconds on the Putney to Chiswick course. Meanwhile, in the women's race, it was Oxford who claimed victory, their first win since 2016. A man from South Wales who's climbed the region's highest peak 15 times a week for the past year has finished his challenge this morning.
Oh, thank you, guys!
Here is the moment that Chris Daniel reached the summit after going up and down Penarvan 3 times a day, 5 days a week, raising thousands of pounds for charity. He took on the challenge last April in memory of his wife Rita, who died from bowel cancer. Well, that is all from me and the team, but there's plenty more on the BBC News website. Good night.
Hello, good afternoon. President Trump has been giving more details about the daring rescue of a second crew member from a US military jet, which was shot down over Iran. Posting on Truth Social a few minutes ago, Mr. Trump described him as a highly respected colonel who'd been seriously injured and said the Iranian military were getting close before he was rescued. Joe Inwood reports.
Deep in Iranian territory, the remnants of a mission Donald Trump has called miraculous. Its target, a US airman, missing since his jet was shot down on Friday. In the dead of night, he was successfully rescued, injured but alive. The wreckage strewn around, said to be C-130 transports and helicopters, the US claims to have destroyed after they got stuck. "We got him," the president wrote on social media. This is the first time in military memory that 2 US pilots have been rescued separately deep in enemy territory. "We will never leave an American warfighter behind," he said. The rescue seems to have taken place far further inside Iranian territory than previously suspected. The BBC has geolocated the site of the wreckage to here, just 50 kilometres from the major city of Isfahan. There had been an operation to find the missing crew underway since Friday, when their jet, an F-15E, was shot down. Iranian state TV showed these images of the wreckage, but there was no sign of either the pilot or the weapon systems. This was the message to local people. If you capture an enemy pilot and hand them over alive to the military or law enforcement, you will be given a suitable reward, the newsreader says. Local people were pictured looking for the downed airman, the equivalent of £50,000 on offer. "Don't worry, he'll be found," the man says. But the US military was searching too, aided by locator beacons. Pictures emerged showing a combat rescue mission underway, but they only recovered the pilot. If Iran could capture the airman, who we now know was a high-ranking officer, a colonel, it would have been a propaganda coup. Instead, a military spokesman said the US operation had been a failure. claiming to have destroyed multiple aircraft. This is undoubtedly a boost for Donald Trump, but he still faces many challenges in ending this war that he started. Iran is still effectively blockading the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil usually flows. He has issued increasing threats against them, all of which have been ignored. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally, has used her first Easter sermon to call for an end to what she described as violence and destruction in the Middle East. In Rome, Pope Leo also echoed this message. In his first Easter Mass since his election last year, he urged those who unleash wars to choose peace. Our global religion correspondent, Lebu Diseko, reports.
A first Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral for the first woman to lead the Anglican Church. God as a source of hope during grief and uncertainty were themes woven through Archbishop Sarah's sermon. The pain of world conflict was a focus too, as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its 6th week.
Let us pray and call with renewed urgency for an end to the violence and destruction in the Middle East and the Gulf. May our Christian sisters and brothers know and celebrate the hope of the empty tomb. May all people of the region receive the peace, justice and freedom they long for.
Global conflict was a focus for Pope Leo as well, as he gave his first Urbi et Orbi message. Speaking to thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, he warned that people are becoming indifferent to violence, and he implored world leaders to find peace.
Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have the power to unleash wars choose peace. Not a peace imposed by force, but through dialogue. Not with the desire to dominate others, but to encounter them.
It's not the first time the pontiff has spoken about current conflict. On Palm Sunday, he warned that God ignores the prayers of those with hands full of blood. He announced that he will return to the Basilica in 6 days' time to host a prayer vigil for peace. Lebu Diseko, BBC News.
The King and Queen have attended the traditional Easter Sunday church service in Windsor. They were joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales at St George's Chapel, along with other members of the royal family. But Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, Sarah Ferguson and their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, were not in attendance. Sean Dilley reports.
It was a very traditional Easter Sunday service for the royal family here at St George's Chapel, the home of worship inside Windsor Castle since the 15th century. Today's gathering is mostly a private family event, but this is the first time the Prince and Princess of Wales' children, George, Charlotte and Louis, have been pictured together publicly this year. Other senior faces were welcomed. The elephant's not in the room though, his brother Andrew. He and Sarah Ferguson did not attend, and their daughters, Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice, had other plans. The former Duke of York is currently under police investigation over allegations he denies relating to his relationship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But while not present today, he will be on the King's mind. He and the Queen are due to make a state visit to the US later this month. President Trump is a renowned fan of the royal family, but less so recently of the UK, after the Prime Minister initially refused to allow the use of British air bases to strike Iran. President Trump is likely to roll out the red carpet, but a bigger danger is of protests after high-profile Democrats have called on the King to meet survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, something we understand he's unlikely to be able to agree to, so not to interfere with ongoing police investigations. But if his brother's alleged conduct weighs heavily, it wasn't obvious today, the King cheerfully mixing with his guests. And plenty of support outside Windsor Castle, some of these people lining the street before first light. Never in modern times have the royal family faced such scrutiny, but today's Easter gathering sending its traditional message of unity in the monarchy and the faith that guides them. Sean Dilley, BBC News at Windsor Castle.
The main sponsor of the wireless festival, Pepsi, says it's decided to withdraw sponsorship of the event. It comes after the Prime Minister said it was deeply concerning that the American rapper Kanye West had been chosen to headline the London festival this summer. The 48-year-old has been criticised for making anti-Semitic and pro-Nazi remarks in recent years. He issued an apology in January. Nearly 3,000 County Lines drug operations were closed last year in a record year for the Home Office. Government data also shows nearly 1,000 knives were seized. County Lines are when gangs run drugs from big cities to small towns using children. The astronauts on board NASA's Artemis 2 mission say they caught their first glimpse of the far side of the moon. The crew's spacecraft was on course to enter what's known as the lunar sphere of influence overnight, but the onboard toilet is continuing to cause problems. Our science editor Rebecca Morell has more.
Speeding through space, the Orion capsule is now closer to the moon than it is to Earth, and the astronauts have been taking their first images of the place they can't wait to visit.
Well, last night we did have our first view of the moon far side, and it was just absolutely spectacular. I think that one of the interesting things that happens when you look at a moon that inherently just looks different is like the darker parts just aren't quite in the right place, and something about you senses that is not the moon that I'm used to seeing.
The crew have also had the chance to catch up with their families 200,000 miles away.
This morning when my two daughters came on and it was just the three of us talking, it was surreal. Just we're up here, we're so far away, and for a moment I was reunited with my little family, and it was just the greatest moment of my entire life.
The astronauts have been getting used to life in microgravity. There's not much room inside their capsule, but they're learning how to eat, work and exercise. And all under the watchful eye of the NASA team back on Earth. But it hasn't all been plain sailing.
You're getting a live look outside the windows of the Orion spacecraft as they conduct that wastewater dump.
There's a problem with the Universal Waste Management System, otherwise known as the toilet. An exterior vent that dumps the wastewater has frozen. The world is following every moment of this mission, and that includes how the astronauts are getting by with a temperamental Lou.
It technically will work with number one right now, but we just want to keep the tanks half full right now until we figure out what's going on with the vent line. Absolutely, it'd still go for number two. As far as the collapsible contingency urine devices, each crew member has 2 of those.
Apart from the problematic plumbing, the Orion spacecraft is performing well, and the astronauts are getting ready for the main event, their close encounter with the moon. Rebecca Morell, BBC News at Mission Control in Houston.
That is all from me, but there's lots more on all our stories on the BBC News website. The next news here on BBC One is at 25 to 5. Goodbye for now.
Today, an extraordinary foul-mouthed threat from the US president to blow up Iranian infrastructure if they don't open a key shipping passage. Overnight, an audacious US success. Despite having to abandon these aircraft, they rescued the wounded crew member of a downed fighter jet. Also today, Kanye West's anti-Semitic slurs prompt Pepsi to withdraw from sponsoring a London summer festival where he's booked to appear. In her first Easter sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally, calls for an end to violence in the Middle East. And the far side of the moon is now in sight for NASA's Artemis 2 astronauts. Good afternoon. President Trump has issued an expletive-laden warning to Iran, threatening to blow up its power plants and bridges if it fails to open up the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping by his deadline of tomorrow. Earlier, he celebrated the rescue of a US crew member who was on board a fighter jet shot down over Iran on Friday. Mr. Trump said the crew member was seriously wounded when they were rescued from deep inside the mountains of Iran. With more, here's Joe Linwood.
Deep in Iranian territory, the remnants of a mission that Donald Trump has called miraculous. The wreckage you can see are US C-130 transport planes, which they say had to be abandoned and then destroyed. But they were there to find a US airman, missing since his jet was shot down on Friday. In the dead of night, he was successfully rescued, badly injured but alive. "We got him," President Trump wrote on social media. This is the first time in military memory that 2 US pilots have been rescued separately deep in enemy territory. "We will never leave an American warfighter behind," he wrote. The rescue seems to have taken place far further inside Iranian territory than previously suspected. The BBC has geolocated the site of the wreckage to here, just 50 kilometers from the major city of Isfahan. There had been an operation to find the missing crew underway since Friday, when their jet, an F-15E, was shot down. Iranian state TV showed these images of the wreckage, but there was no sign of either the pilot or the weapons systems officer. This was the message to local people on state TV. "If you capture an enemy pilot, you will be given a reward," the newsreader says. Local people were pictured looking for the downed airman, the equivalent of £50,000 on offer. But the US military was searching too, aided by locator beacons. Pictures emerged showing a combat rescue mission underway on Saturday, but that only recovered the pilot. If Iran could capture the other airman, who we now know was a high-ranking officer, colonel, it would have been a propaganda coup. But he seems to have been rescued at with multiple aircraft. That led Iran's military spokesman to say the US operation had been a failure, claiming they had destroyed the aircraft. However dramatic, today's rescue is a distraction from the more serious and ongoing issue of actually ending this war. Iran, still being bombed, is selectively but effectively blockading the Strait of Hormuz. That was the subject of an extraordinary, expletive-laden message from the president, who wrote, "Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the strait, you crazy or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah." Last week, US strikes destroyed the newly built B1 bridge, a vital crossing near the capital. A vast number of Iranian industrial sites have been hit, doing lasting damage to the economy. Donald Trump is promising worse still. He has given Iran until Tuesday to respond, or has threatened, in his words, to rain hell upon them.
Joe, the president's words are too foul-mouthed for us to broadcast. It is amazing, isn't it?
It really is. I think people will see that that is deeply, unpresidential language. Other people might note the, some would see, mocking way he signed off, "Praise be to Allah." He normally says, "Praise be to God." But I think actually the thing for me that's most extraordinary here is contained within that is a threat to destroy the civilian infrastructure of a country. Many people will argue that that is a war crime. Now, I've been speaking to our colleagues at the BBC Persian service, and they say that people inside the country, both supporters and opponents of the regime, are living in absolute terror at the damage that's being done to this country, not just its military infrastructure, but its bridges, its roads, its economy. And the problem that they see is that whatever happens with the regime, whether it survives, whether it falls, there is damage being done here to the future of their country, which it will take many, many years to get over. And whether you support the regime, whether you oppose it, Iranians are all paying a very heavy price.
Joe, thank you. Joe in Pepsi says it's withdrawing its sponsorship of this summer's wireless festival in London after Kanye West was booked to headline the event. The 48-year-old American rapper has made a series of anti-Semitic remarks in recent years, which he attributed in November to being bipolar. The largest body representing Jews in the UK says he could be blocked from entering the country. Here's Zoe O'Brien.
Kanye West being booked to headline Wireless Festival was described as historic and extraordinary by its promoters, but it could be memorable for the wrong reasons. Today, its main sponsor, Pepsi, pulled out after a backlash because the rapper, now known as Ye, once declared himself a Nazi. The BBC understands the Home Office has not yet received an application for him to enter the UK, but some say it should be denied.
We think that will be a very appropriate step were the Home Secretary find a way to not allow them into the country. The vast majority of British people are good, they're not racist, they're not bigots, and I'm sure will be very relieved if such a man is not permitted to be in the UK and to be born here.
The 48-year-old previously released a song called Heil Hitler and sold clothing with swastikas on. He's since apologised, saying he's not an anti-Semite and that his bipolar caused him to suffer manic episodes.
It's not good what he said. Fine, I get it, but, you know, he had an episode. Maybe it's not, you know, the right thing and whatnot, and you can't just pin everything on an episode.
Feels like he was kind of reintegrating into like the music scene from a cultural life without any kind of real consequence. So yeah, that's it.
I'm not too sure if now would be the greatest time because it's still too recent after all the things that he said. And me personally, I feel like he needs a lot of help.
Today, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said he was concerned by the booking at London's Finsbury Park. He said anti-Semitism in any form is abhorrent and must be confronted firmly wherever it appears. Everyone has a responsibility to ensure Britain is a place where Jewish people feel safe. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey called on Ye not to be allowed into the country, whilst Conservative leader Kevin Badenoch said he shouldn't be allowed to perform. Wireless organisers Festival Republic, as well as West's representatives, have been approached for comment. Zoe O'Brien, BBC News.
The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally, has used her first Easter sermon to call for an end to what she described as violence and destruction in the Middle East. In Rome, Pope Leo also echoed this message. In his first Easter Mass since his election last year, he urged those who unleash force to choose peace. Our global religion correspondent Lebu Diseko reports.
A first Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral for the first woman to lead the Anglican Church. God as a source of hope during grief and uncertainty were themes woven through Archbishop Sarah's sermon. The pain of world conflict was a focus too as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its 6th week.
Let us pray and call with renewed urgency for an end to the violence and destruction in the Middle East and the Gulf. May our Christian sisters and brothers know and celebrate the hope of the empty tomb. May all people of the region receive the peace, justice and freedom they long for.
Global conflict was a focus for Pope Leo as well, as he gave his first Urbi et Orbi message. Speaking to thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, he warned that people are becoming indifferent to violence, and he implored world leaders to find peace.
Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have the power to unleash wars choose peace. Not a peace imposed by force, but through dialogue. Not with the desire to dominate others, but to encounter them.
It's not the first time the pontiff has spoken about current conflict. On Palm Sunday, he warned that God ignores the prayers of those with hands full of blood. At the place where Jesus is believed to have been crucified and buried, a mass without the usual crowds of worshippers. Access to holy sites in Jerusalem is restricted because of the ongoing conflict with Iran. The Latin Patriarch said in his homily that too many Jews have been judged by hatred, violence and retaliation. But, he added, the meaning of Easter is choosing forgiveness when it would be easier to harden our hearts. Lebu Diseko, BBC News.
King and Queen have attended the traditional Easter Sunday church service in Windsor. They were joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales at St George's Chapel, along with other members of the royal family. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Sarah Ferguson and their daughters Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie were not in attendance. John Dilly reports.
It was a very traditional Easter Sunday service for the royal family here at St George's Chapel, the home of worship at Windsor Castle since the 15th century. Today's gathering is mostly a private family event. It's the first time we've seen the Prince and Princess of Wales in public with all three of their children this year. A notable absence, though, was the King's brother, Andrew. He and Sarah Ferguson did not attend, and their daughters, Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice, had previously announced they had alternative plans. The former Duke of York is currently under police investigation for allegations he denies relating to his relationship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But while not present today, he will be on the King's mind. The King and Queen are due to make a state visit to the United States later this month. President Trump is a renowned fan of the royal family, less so of the UK lately, which he says did too little to support his initial strikes on Iran. President Trump is likely to roll out the red carpet, but the bigger danger is of protests after high-profile Democrats have called on the King to meet the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, something we understand he's unlikely to be able to agree to, so not to interfere with ongoing police investigations. But if his brother's alleged conduct weighs heavily, it wasn't obvious today. On duty, meeting well-wishers and plenty of support outside Windsor Castle, some of these lining the streets before first light. Never in modern times have the royal family faced so much scrutiny, but today's Easter gathering sending its traditional message of unity in the monarchy and the faith that guides them. Sean Diddy, BBC News at Windsor Castle.
Astronauts on board NASA's Artemis 2 mission say they've caught their first glimpse of the far side of the moon. The crew spacecraft was on course to enter what's known as the lunar sphere of influence overnight, with the moon's gravitational pull exceeding the Earth's. Our science editor Rebecca Morell has more.
Speeding through space, the Orion capsule is now closer to the moon than it is to Earth. And the astronauts have been taking their first images of the place they can't wait to visit.
Well, last night we did have our first view of the moon far side, and it was just absolutely spectacular. I think that one of the interesting things that happens when you look at a moon that inherently just looks different is like the darker parts just aren't quite in the right place, and something about you senses that is not the moon that I'm used to seeing.
The crew have also had the chance to catch up with their families 200,000 miles away.
This morning when my two daughters came on and it was just the three of us talking, it was surreal. Just we're up here, we're so far away, and for a moment I was reunited with my little family, and it was just the greatest moment of my entire life.
The astronauts have been getting used to life in microgravity. There's not much room inside their capsule, but they're learning how to eat, work and exercise. And all under the watchful eye of the NASA team back on Earth. But it hasn't all been plain sailing.
We're getting a live look outside the windows of the Orion spacecraft as they conduct that wastewater dump.
There's a problem with the Universal Waste Management System, otherwise known as the toilet. An exterior vent that dumps the wastewater has frozen. The world is following every moment of this mission, and that includes how the astronauts are getting by with a temperamental Lou.
It technically will work with number one right now, but we just want to keep the tanks half full right now until we figure out what's going on with the vent line. Absolutely, it still goes for number two. As far as the collapsive contingency urine devices, each crew member has 2 of those.
Apart from the problematic plumbing, the Orion spacecraft is performing well, and the astronauts are getting ready for the main event, their close encounter with the moon. Rebecca Morell, BBC News at Mission Control in Houston.
Football now, and Hearts has returned to the top of the Scottish Premiership after drawing with bottom side Livingston. It means that their dream of winning their first league title in more than 60 years is still alive. Joe Lipsky with them.
For 7 more matches for Hearts, it's now a test of mind. They've led the Scottish Premiership unthinkably since September, but the old firm are on their tail. Rangers went above them with their win yesterday. Now against the bottom side, their Hearts skip the beat. Livingston have won just one league game all season. Now they will wonder. The Hearts away fans made up 3 sides of the ground. Eventually, the more gritty. Scotland's own champions made it 1-1. Just like the conditions, things were now changing quickly. And this year, the spring in this league could look different. The last time Hearts won it was in 1960, and though the finish line is close, this game shows it's not done yet. Struggling Livingston were level again. It finished 2-2. Hearts are still set on the title, but these dropped points could be crucial. Joe Lensky, BBC News.
That's That's it from us. The news continues here on BBC One. Now it's time for the news where you are. Bye-bye.